Sitting on a sturdy 2.5 points out of 5 rounds, we're playing the black pieces, and I enter a structure finally that resembles kind of a Grunfeld with this d5. We castle, all of this is still theory, we take, and now black is up a pawn, but white is gonna try and win it right back, and then white usually gains some activity in the center and an open diagonal for this bishop, which is why, although b5 is the best move, I am kind of hesitant to play that, because then a move like knight to e5 looks very scary. It attacks the rook, it centralizes the knight. It does defend the pawn, but it seems kind of dangerous to me, so I'm looking for a different way that I can play on, and I just developed my bishop to e6, defending the pawn. The queen attacks the pawn again, and the opponent is really trying to go after it. Now I can either play knight to c6 or b5 again. I go c5 instead. I'm looking to, in counter, open up my dark square bishop if black ever takes like this. This is not a great move. Now knight to g5 is the best move by the opponent, but he just takes, and now knight to c6, the material is equal, but white can technically just gain back this pawn. Knight takes, and now I bring the rook to c8. So I served my opponent his own medicine. I gave back a pawn to open up my own activity with the pieces, but now I would also really like to win back this pawn. That is an annoying pawn to be down of. The rook is attacking the queen, so I need to do something about that. I need to find a square for this queen. Knight to d7 is apparently the best move. The second best move is queen to c7, but queen to c7, which is what I play, seems to run into bishop f4, apparently trapping the queen. Every single square that the queen could go to is defended, and I cannot put anything in the way of the bishop, because that's just going to get captured. And so here I'm thinking, oh my goodness, have I blundered the queen? But no, knight to b4, the only move. I am counter-attacking the opponent's queen, and at the same time opening an attack on the c-pawn. Luckily I found this move. Otherwise I would have kept on playing just down a queen, but that's not necessary. The opponent thinks for a little while here and decides to take the queen, but this is a blunder. Knight takes, and after the rook counterattacks my knight, I have a chance to win material with knight to b4 attacking the pawn, but instead I just stay here, and after rook takes and rook takes pawn, we're back into a somewhat equal position. We have the same amount of material. Maybe black has a little bit more activity, but the position is extremely equal here. On my side, I have the fact that I have the bishop pair. I do collect a pawn here on a2, so it looks like a pretty comfortable position for black to play here. Knight to d4 gets a mistake by the engine because of bishop to d5, trying to trade the light square bishops so that I would be the only one with a bishop on the board. Instead I decide to defend my pawn like this, b6, and he tries to trap my pawn, but I have this move e5 counter-attacking a knight, so if he wants to go after the bishop he will have to leave his knight here, and so he does that exactly. I now have an isolated pawn in the center of the board. Material is still equal, but black does have a slight edge in this position. Rook to d8 defends the pawn. Potentially in the future I'm going to use this pawn as a bomb in the position. The opponent takes the pawn. I didn't notice that, I just forgot about the pawn. I might have decided to play a different move, although this is probably a pawn that I want to defend more rather than the pawn on a7. So now we are down a fair bit on the clock. The opponent is playing very quickly and keeping up on the board as well. I play knight back to d7, not a great move. This is covering the view of the rook of the pawn, but I'm trying to look for ways for this knight to be improved. The bishop is defending the pawn anyway. Maybe I'm gonna be playing f5 or something to just advance a little bit with the pawns. The opponent plays f4 instead, and again the position is 0-0 according to the engine, but black is the only one with some activity here. Knight to c5, poking at this pawn, trying to get the knight to be a little bit more active. Maybe the knight is going to come back to e6. The opponent thinks for a little while. He is hovering over the b pawn, and he decides indeed to attack the pawn, but now I have a reply ready. If I play knight to b3, which is the second best move, here the position will still be 0-0. I only have one move that keeps a very slightly edge for black. I think for a while, I consider it. I am now almost below 1 minute on the clock, while the opponent still has 2 minutes, so I need to come up with a move. I need to find a plan. I need to fight for an advantage somehow, and the only move to do that is indeed d3. Very good. I do give back the pawn that was most advanced, but I'm opening up this diagonal. I'm saving the knight in a very active way. Now the knight is centralized and it's pressuring the b pawn. I am potentially going to come around with my rook and pressure that pawn. Now we have b5 by the opponent. Bishop to f8 is an active move to bring the bishop around. But I am not really looking to move that bishop. The bishop is in a strong diagonal anyway. Instead I play rook to c8, pressuring the knight and trying to come to the back rank. A move that I'm quite happy with. And indeed it is hard for white to find precise moves. This is a position where only white can potentially go wrong here. The opponent thinks for a while and plays bishop to e4, counterattacking the knight. Now probably it is fine to take and take, but that would simplify the position maybe a little bit too much. I want to keep more pieces on the board. 35 seconds left on the clock. It is time to play a move, to find a plan. I cannot allow myself to get too low on time because the opponent still has plenty of time and I'm going to get flagged if it keeps going like this, and I think that the opponent is realizing that too. The knight jumps back and he just plays a move right away because he realizes that I'm pressuring. He's pressuring the clock. The bishop and the rook were combining their attack on f7, so this move with the knight blocks that. Now white has the option of just taking the knight and damage the pawn structure, which is exactly what he does. I think for a second whether I should take the knight, but that's nonsense. He would just take this pawn, so I capture back with my f pawn, and now the knight is still hanging, it's still under attack. The opponent has to move it or defend it with the rook, but maybe moving it is a little bit more active. He could jump into the center, attack my pawn, maybe... no, actually that's a blunder, he shouldn't do that. But he needs to find a square for this knight, maybe knight to e3 and knight to c4 in the future, or knight to b4 right away, something like that. The opponent thinks and he plays knight to a3. This is a mistake. This allows me to give a check and then pin the knight to the rook and potentially win it. But I don't find this idea. Instead I attack the knight more directly, and I see the fact that the knight doesn't have many squares that it can go to. It can only go to b1 in the future, although it is not as strong as the other option. And now we have bishop to d4, we give a check, we bring the bishop into a more active square, and finally we are gaining a significant advantage. We are attacking the knight, and since there's only one piece defending the knight, he has to move it. Knight to b1, and I play rook to b3. It was better rook to c1 apparently, but the opponent defends with the rook, and now for a second I think, wait, am I just winning material here? Bishop to d4, I force the rook to move and then I'm gonna take the knight, but as it turns out not quite. There is rook a8 check and then he can move the knight, but instead he goes here. This is a blunder if I pin the knight, but no, I take the pawn. I go for the wrong plan. I could have won material by pinning that knight. Now I find the idea now, but it's a little bit late. White can indeed come with the king in time and just defend his knight, or indeed move the knight away. But I still have a passed pawn. I am pressuring these pieces, I'm creating threats, and it is important that I don't lose on time here. So I simplify the position into this endgame that looks to be better for black, definitely. We have a passed pawn, so it is a matter of, am I going to be able to exploit this passed pawn and make it advance up the board enough to then gain significant advantage, or maybe even somehow promote that pawn. Although having the rook in front of the pawn is not the best position for the rook, definitely. I would want it to be behind the pawn. Rooks belong behind passed pawns. Now white can always stop the promotion, but if I can create enough weaknesses in the position of white, I should be able to still win this endgame. And indeed now I allow him to win this pawn so that I can create another different passed pawn with his king offside. It will need to take some time to come back into the game. This is still a draw with best play, but it is white that is fighting for the draw. And indeed after this position, rook to f5, I'm threatening to enter a one king and pawn endgame, and the opponent, probably because of time pressure, decides to just trade the rooks, and this is completely lost. My king is walking in and he can collect the pawn, but I am just too quick. I win his pawns like this. Now I have fast pawns. It's just a matter of not blundering a stalemate in any way. The kings are marching up. I shoulder his king, and now the promotion is inevitable. The opponent decides to play on. Probably he wants to play until checkmate. Fools will resign, I guess. So the king comes down, and now it's just a textbook conversion. We gain knight opposition with this king, and now we use the queen to repeat the same opposition over and over. We are pushing the king to the edge of the board, like this. The opponent goes to the corner, and now it's time to bring the king into the game so that we can deliver checkmate like that. I could also have promoted the other pawn, but this is probably even faster. King goes to the corner, and finally queen to g7 is a checkmate. The opponent loses the game, and we get back to 3.5 out of 6 rounds. Wait, no, was this round? Yes, 3.5 out of 6 rounds. So we're just about 50% with our performance. And we still have 3 rounds to go. We are still in the running for a pretty good placement. If we can win maybe 2 more rounds and a draw, it would definitely give me a very good result for this tournament. And in the meantime, thank you so much guys for watching. I appreciate your support. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.